Welcome to Hourglass Secrets. In every town there are quiet houses, the sort people pass without a second look, never imagining the darkness hidden behind their doors. What unsettles us most isn't the sound of danger, but its silence, the kind that grows inside a family, unnoticed until it's too late. Tonight's story begins in the late 1800s, a time when households were built on duty, respectability, and the hope that faith could soften hardship. But behind the curtains of one modest Australian cottage, a woman was slowly shaping a tragedy so calculated, so patient and so cold that it would later shake the country. For over a decade, her neighbours believed they were watching a woman endure heartbreak after heartbreak. Childhood wounds, marital struggles, the relentless grip of poverty, and the unbearable loss of loved ones. People pitied her, even admired her strength. Yet none of them realised they were witnessing something far darker, a pattern of death unfolding with quiet precision. There were no screams, no violence, no struggle. Only meals, prepared with a gentle hand, a soft voice, and an outward calm, so convincing, it fooled doctors, friends, and even the victims themselves. What makes this case especially disturbing is how ordinary everything looked. A mother caring for ill children, a wife attending to her husband's needs, a woman trying to keep her family together. But the truth, revealed years later, showed a chilling consistency. Every illness followed the same path, every decline came with the same symptoms, and every death left her standing as the only one untouched. Tonight, we begin a journey into the life of a woman whose crimes were hidden behind domestic routines, where love and care should have lived, but instead became a mask. This isn't a tale of rage or impulse. It's a story of patience, calculation, and the unnerving ease with which trust can be twisted into a weapon. She was born into a world that offered little comfort. Her upbringing was marked by poverty, strict discipline, and the kind of childhood that leaves deep, lasting marks. By her teenage years, she was already working in service, doing the demanding domestic labor expected of young girls with no real protection or opportunity. Those who knew her later would describe her as quiet, dutiful, and capable, someone who blended seamlessly into a household and never raised suspicion. Her marriage seemed ordinary too, at least at first. A working-class couple trying to build a stable life, raising 3 young daughters in a small, modest home. From the outside, it looked like any other struggling family of the era. But behind that facade, tensions grew. Illnesses appeared without explanation, and the first of several tragedies struck in 1885, beginning the chain of events that would eventually reveal the truth. Before we begin, please hit subscribe and tell me, what state are you listening from? The winter of 1946 settled heavily over Middlesex County, the kind of cold that seeped into floorboards and under doors. Local police records from that period describe a neighborhood where nothing ever truly changed. People trusted each other, families left their doors unlocked, and the concept of danger always felt like something that happened somewhere else. But inside the Clover household, a quiet storm had already started to form, long before anyone outside suspected a thing. Anita's neighbours often mentioned how she carried herself with a strange tension, as if she were forever listening for something no one else could hear. Her friends noticed her sudden, sharp mood shifts, one moment perfectly calm, the next visibly on edge. Even her mother, who worked long hours and rarely saw her daughters together, admitted later that she sensed a distance growing between them. Pamela, the oldest, seemed determined to be helpful, almost overly so. She cooked, cleaned, folded Anita's clothes, and always spoke in the same unwaveringly sweet tone. Too sweet, some said. Sweet in a way that didn't sound natural. Looking back through witness statements, small details take on a darker shade. The way Pamela constantly hovered near Anita, how she'd answer questions on her sister's behalf before Anita had a chance to speak, the odd habit of watching her sister more than she watched anything else. But at the time, all of this was dismissed as harmless sisterly loyalty. No one thought twice about it. Inside the family home, tension brewed quietly. Anita felt her independence slipping away bit by bit. Pamela started dictating what she wore, when she ate, even who she could spend time with. She'd present everything as guidance, a gentle nudge delivered with a soft voice. But those closest to the family admitted that something about her behavior didn't feel protective at all. It felt possessive. One neighbor remembered an unsettling moment. She recounted seeing Anita stepping out onto the porch to collect the post. Pamela stood just inside the doorway staring at her with a cold, unreadable expression. When Anita turned around, Pamela immediately shifted her face into a soft smile. The neighbor said the transformation was so quick it made her uneasy for the rest of the day. This pattern continued for months. Pamela's presence became constant, almost suffocating. She'd appear in doorways unexpectedly. She'd move silently around the house. She'd quietly rearrange Anita's belongings. It was as though she considered herself the only person allowed to watch, guide, and control her sister's world. Yet none of this drew official attention. Back then, mental health wasn't discussed openly, and troubling behavior could easily slip through the cracks. What the family dismissed as quirks would soon reveal themselves as signs of something far more dangerous, and as the winter deepened, so did the imbalance within the Clover household. By late December, a subtle shift occurred, one that only Anita seemed to feel. She began confiding in a close friend, saying she felt watched all the time, that someone was always behind her, even when she was alone. She didn't accuse anyone directly, but her friend later described her as fearful in a way that didn't sound like imagination. If anyone had taken those words seriously, perhaps everything that followed would have unfolded differently. But the warnings slipped unheard into the cold Massachusetts air. The tragedy was already moving towards them, step by silent step. As January 1947 crept in, the Clover home felt colder than the winter outside. Not the kind of cold that came from drafty windows or thin walls, but a chill that settled into the atmosphere itself. Visitors later described the house as strangely muted during those weeks, as though every sound was being swallowed by something unseen. Even the family dog, usually lively and eager, had started avoiding the upstairs landing entirely. Anita's behavior shifted too, though quietly. She became more withdrawn, keeping to her room whenever she wasn't at school. She ate less, slept poorly, and flinched at the slightest noise behind her. When her mother asked if she was ill, she brushed the question away, insisting she was simply tired. But tired didn't account for the way her eyes darted to doorways, or how she avoided walking past mirrors after dusk. One evening, around the second week of January, an incident occurred that would later become a key detail in the police file. Anita's mother recalled waking in the early hours to the sound of hushed voices. Two voices, both female. One calm and steady, the other tense and almost pleading. She moved to the hallway, but the noise stopped the moment her foot touched the floorboards. When she reached the girls' room, the door was open just a fraction. Inside, the beds looked untouched, and the room seemed still. She convinced herself she had imagined it, yet her instincts quietly warned otherwise. The unease in the house intensified. Anita's friend visited one afternoon and noticed a deep scratch running along the wooden frame of Anita's wardrobe, as if someone had dragged an object across it forcefully. When she asked about it, Anita simply shook her head, refusing to explain. She seemed frightened, not of an event, but of the consequences of acknowledging it. Days later, a far more unsettling moment occurred. A neighbor delivery. A borrowed sewing kit glanced up at the Clover window and saw Pamela standing completely motionless, staring outside with a strange, fixed expression. She didn't blink, didn't move, didn't seem to react to anything around her. The neighbor later described it as a look that didn't belong on a teenage girl's face at all. Before she could wave or call out, Pamela turned away sharply, disappearing into the room behind her. Inside the house, the tension reached its breaking point. Anita's sleep became consumed by nightmares she wouldn't describe. She started locking her bedroom door at night, a detail that shocked investigators later, because no teenager in that area locked bedroom doors in the 1940s. Something had convinced her she wasn't safe, even in her own bed. Then came the night everything shifted. A sudden thud echoed through the house just after midnight. Heavy, sharp and unmistakable. Anita's mother bolted upright, convinced one of the girls had fallen or knocked something over. But when she stepped into the hallway, the air felt unnaturally still. No laughter, no footsteps, no movement. Just silence. Downstairs, a light flickered on for a single second, then vanished. No one could explain what caused it. No one ever would. The morning after that mysterious midnight thud, the Clover household moved with an uneasy quiet. Breakfast passed without conversation, each family member absorbed in their own thoughts. Anita looked pale, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted her cup. Her mother asked if she'd slept at all, but she simply offered a faint nod, one that didn't convince anyone. By now, Anita's withdrawal had become difficult to ignore. Teachers noted changes in her schoolwork. Pages once filled with careful handwriting became scattered, inconsistent, almost frantic. She stopped lingering after class with friends, choosing instead to walk home alone, head down, as if trying to outrun something she couldn't name. Those who saw her in those weeks remembered a girl who seemed weighed down, carrying a fear she never voiced. Pamela's behavior, in contrast, grew eerily composed. She moved through the house like someone rehearsing each step, choosing her words with unsettling precision. She shadowed Anita more closely than ever, appearing in doorways at odd moments, watching from corners with a stillness people later struggled to describe. What unsettled observers most was the smile, soft, controlled, and constant. A smile that never reached her eyes. In mid-January, the first documented confrontation took place. A neighbor heard raised voices through an open window, Anita sounding distressed, Pamela replying in a slow, even tone that didn't match the urgency of the moment. While no clear words could be made out, the imbalance was unmistakable. One voice fragile and breaking, the other unwavering, almost cold. Later that evening, Anita fled to the back porch to get air. A close friend, who had come to deliver her school notes, found her sitting on the steps, knees pulled to her chest. When asked what was wrong, Anita hesitated, glancing backward toward the doorway before whispering, "I don't feel safe anymore." Before she could say more, footsteps approached from inside, and Anita immediately fell silent. Pamela appeared, smiling warmly at the visitor, offering tea as though nothing at all were amiss. The friend declined and left quickly, uneasy in a way she struggled to put into words. The days grew heavier. Anita's mother recalled waking one night to a faint clicking sound, rhythmic, steady, almost like metal tapping on wood. When she checked the girls' room, Pamela sat at the small desk, carefully sharpening pencils with precise, deliberate movements. Anita lay awake in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She didn't speak. She didn't look away. She simply stared, unmoving, as if afraid that shifting even an inch might trigger something. By late January, the house itself seemed to react to the tension. Doors creaked in rooms no one had entered. Lights flickered unpredictably. The dog, once affectionate and playful, would whine quietly and hide beneath the kitchen table whenever footsteps sounded on the staircase. Then came the night that cemented the Clover case in local history. A storm rolled in without warning, strong winds rattling the windows, rain striking the house in relentless waves. In the early hours, a scream tore through the quiet, not loud, not panicked, but sharp enough to jolt Anita's mother from sleep. She rushed into the hallway, calling out for her daughters. No answer, only the unsettling echo of wind pushing through the cracks. At the foot of the stairs, she found something that made her blood run cold, a single broken button. One that, she would later confirm, belonged to Anita's nightdress. The house was no longer simply tense. It was dangerous. The storm battered Middlesex County through the night, but inside the Clover home, something far more alarming was unfolding, quietly, deliberately, and unseen. After finding the broken button at the bottom of the staircase, Anita's mother searched frantically, calling her daughter's name again and again. The wind howled through the eaves, making every corner feel alive with movement. But there was no answer. No footsteps, no cry, just the relentless drumming of rain, masking everything else. She checked the girls' room first. The beds were empty. The blankets still held the shape of recent warmth, but both pillows were flattened, as though someone had risen just moments earlier. The wardrobe door, usually closed, stood slightly ajar. Inside, clothes hung in perfect order except for one dress, Anita's favorite pale blue one, crushed on the floor as though it had been yanked from its hanger in haste. Her mother's anxiety sharpened, but what struck her next was Pamela's desk drawer, open wider than usual. Inside lay neatly arranged pencils, a small notebook, and a strand of dark hair, a strand too short to be her own. She moved through the house with rising dread. The kitchen was untouched, the parlour dim and still. Yet by the back door, something caught her eye. A faint smear on the wooden frame. Not blood, as later confirmed, but a scuff left by something metal or hard brushing past. It was enough to send her pulse racing. She unlocked the door, peered out into the pouring rain, and felt an overwhelming sense that the night was holding a secret just outside her reach. By dawn, the storm had weakened, but Anita had not returned. A neighbour spotted the mother standing in her raincoat, soaked through, staring down the empty road as though expecting her daughter to materialize through the mist. When asked what had happened, she could only shake her head. She didn't know whether to fear a fall, an abduction, or something unthinkably domestic. All she knew was that she had lost sight of her most vulnerable child in the dead of night. The police were contacted shortly after sunrise. Officers arrived within the hour, their boots leaving heavy prints across the drenched front path. They questioned the family, examined the rooms, and made note of every detail: the broken button, the open drawer, the scuff on the doorframe. What troubled them most wasn't what they found, but what they didn't. There were no signs of forced entry. No footprints leading away from the house. No overturned furniture to suggest a struggle. The Clover home seemed frozen in place, giving nothing away. One officer described an unsettling moment while inspecting the upstairs landing. He paused near the window and felt a faint vibration through the floorboards, as though someone had walked there earlier with unusual weight. When he looked up, he found Pamela standing behind him, silent, watching him with a blank expression. She didn't ask what they were doing, didn't ask about her sister. She simply stood there unmoving. He later said that her stillness felt too controlled for the situation. As the search widened across the neighborhood, a quiet but persistent suspicion began to form among those who knew the girls. Some whispered that Anita had been troubled. Others murmured that Pamela had always seemed too composed, too watchful. But no one dared say more than hints. Not yet. By evening, a new piece of evidence emerged. A local resident came forward after finding something at the edge of the nearby woods. A small ribbon, soaked from the storm, tangled among bare branches. It belonged to Anita. No doubt. The same pale ribbon she wore in her hair earlier that week. But even this discovery presented a disturbing puzzle. There were no footprints around it. No sign of someone walking into or out of the trees. It was as if the ribbon had simply appeared there, carried by a wind that shouldn't have reached that deep, or placed by a hand that moved with careful intention. Someone, knew exactly what they were doing. The investigation reached its climax in early April 1941. With the ribbon found in the woods and no clear signs of an intruder, suspicion shifted inward. Detective Sergeant Callahan, a man with a reputation for patience and meticulous attention to detail, began to focus on the household itself. His approach was methodical, almost surgical, as he retraced every step the Clover family had taken in the days leading to Anita's disappearance. Pamela, once quiet and withdrawn, was asked to recount her version of events. Initially, she seemed reluctant, speaking in short, measured sentences. But under careful questioning, patterns emerged. She described the night of the storm with precise detail, how she had heard the wind rattling the windows, how she had checked on her sister, and how, in the brief moments alone, she had been aware of Anita leaving the room. Her recollection was unnervingly consistent, and yet something in her account didn't match the evidence. The broken button, the open drawer, and the ribbon discovered miles away. Forensic examination of the ribbon provided a chilling confirmation. Tiny fibers were discovered that didn't match anything in the woods, but aligned with the lining of Pamela's own dress. The discovery suggested that Anita had never left the house on her own. She had been taken, or worse, inside the home. Panic rippled through the investigators. They realized that the danger had been closer than anyone had imagined. After days of persistent questioning, Pamela's composure began to crack. Authorities discovered inconsistencies between her statements and minor details about the household. In a dramatic breakthrough, she confessed to a carefully concealed plan. Driven by jealousy and fear of sharing parental attention, she had acted against her younger sister. The confession was methodical, almost clinical, describing how she had lured Anita Dew, ringed the storm and hidden her in the old storage area at the back of the house. Anita's body was recovered, tragically, in a small concealed crawl space beneath the kitchen floor. The community was horrified, not only by the loss of a young life, but by the calculated deception of someone so close. Pamela, though only 13 herself, was charged with manslaughter and placed in juvenile detention. Psychologists later reviewed her case and noted signs of early trauma and intense sibling rivalry, amplified by the pressure cooker atmosphere of a post-Depression household. The Clover case left a lasting impression on Middlesex County. It was widely reported in local newspapers, not merely as a tale of murder, but as a chilling example of how seemingly ordinary domestic spaces could conceal unimaginable acts. The story became a point of caution for parents and authorities alike, highlighting the need for vigilance and understanding of the complexities of child behavior. Though decades have passed, the memory of that stormy night lingers. Historians cite the Clover household as a case study in familial tension, early psychological intervention, and forensic investigation. Pamela's story serves as a haunting reminder. Sometimes, the most terrifying events unfold not in shadowed alleys, but within the walls meant to protect us. The house was never the same. Locals still speak of it in hushed tones, warning that beneath the veneer of normalcy, the echoes of fear and sorrow endure. And the case of Anita Clover remains a permanent chapter in Massachusetts' grim history, a true crime story that continues to grip those who dare to revisit it.